Alright, so we're going back to Jackie Chan now, and today I really want to talk about the third season of the show because it's pretty wild. Like, a big topic of debate on the past videos has been, why do these animal talismans do the things they do? Like, I get why the Ox Zodiac Talisman gives you super strength, but why does the Pig Zodiac make the user shoot laser beams out of their eyes? These questions and more will be answered in the video, so there's links to parts 1 and 2 in the description, and let's start with episode 1 of season 3. This season starts with Captain Black showing Jackie footage of a Taiwanese billionaire named Bartholomew Chang who has been stealing precious jade stones from museums. Chang has this island fortress where he holds an annual martial arts tournament for charity, and it's believed this is used to smuggle jade and recruit new muscle for his organization. Now, Jade the human, not the stone, has the idea to reunite the Jade team to fight in this competition, as Jackie will need backup for such a tough tournament. It kinda plays out like the Dark Tournament arc in Yu Yu Hakusho. Like, I love how this squad pulls up. It starts with El Toro in a jujitsu competition, which he actually does really well in, until he tries to run out and bounce off the ropes like a luchador and just runs into a stone wall out of habit. This is an amazing choke. Like, all he had to do was basically just not incapacitate himself. But I can accept this being a force of habit for a luchador. Jackie gets entered into the Iron Hand tournament, breaking 2 stacks of bricks, which he didn't think he would be able to do, but the bricks actually end up breaking here. Unfortunately, it's a best 2 out of 3, and Jackie can't even use his hands for the rest of the episode because he basically breaks them here. So yeah, he loses too. Viper loses her fight right away and blames her outfit for holding her back, and last but not least, we get Toru in the sumo competition. Toru is pretty undersized for a sumo, but did some training with Jade, who taught him to think big. So Toru can just straight up lift a sumo wrestler in the air now and launch him out of the ring because he thinks big. Like, look at this, everyone lifts off the ground from the impact of the sumo hitting the ground. Toru and the other champions are summoned by Chang to serve his empire, and while Chang gives them a tour of the facility, we see Jade's hiding under Toru's robe, but gets lost from the group. So Jackie goes to look for Jade, which scares Chang, since he thinks he's looking for the Jade, not Jade, which is just kinda unlucky. We end up with the Jade team having a rematch against the other fighters from earlier in the episode, with Viper actually defeating the other gal, so you know what, maybe it really was just the robes holding her back. El Toro has a jujitsu rematch and gets Viper and Toru to hold out a rope so he can bounce off it like he tried earlier. Like, this dude is obsessed with ropes, just fight the man. And Toru and Toro team up to take down Jackie's opponent, since Jackie still can't use his hands and is pretty disadvantaged here, which always makes for interesting Jackie fights. We see the sumo wrestlers from earlier show up, and they have such respect for Toru being their first person to defeat them that they decide to take out the rest of Chang's henchmen, leaving Jackie and Jade to fight Chang. One of Chang's most notable features is he has a hand completely made out of jade, which someone at the martial arts competition said was because he lost a hand in the Iron Hand competition in the past. I kinda assumed this was a joke, like I don't know if you could even actually lose a hand this way, but we see Chang has a cabinet full of different hand attachments. Like a hand with a spoon coming out of his finger, a hand with a toothbrush. I feel like there's a much simpler solution than having a different hand for every function. Or like, I don't know, use your other hand maybe? Jackie uses these hands to fight Chang, even brushing Chang's teeth mid-fight, which is crazy. Like, if you get in a fight with someone and they brush your teeth, you just gotta leave. There's no coming back from that. So the Jade team is all able to take out their respective opponents and save the day, and we see the story of this episode was actually a presentation of what Jade did over her summer vacation, which is a kind of weird way to end the episode. Like, she's been scolded every time she's told a story of her adventures in the past. But yeah, the story of going to an island to arrest a Taiwanese billionaire smuggling stolen gems is pretty believable. Good job, Jade. This episode's really cool. I love that they bring the Jade team back, as we'll see them several times this season, and I love seeing the little competitions here. Now, as always, we gotta go over Jackie's question of the day, which asks Jackie, what is wushu? Which, if you don't know, is also referred to as kung fu. Jackie says wushu is an art, a dance, and even when he plays badminton, he has his own style, which kinda incorporates wushu. Above all, Jackie encourages everyone to find their own style of wushu. So let's move on. Episode 2 starts with the Shadow Hand Enforcers at a Waffle House, or I guess an IHOP, because Valmont gives Ratso his pancakes, and he gets so happy about this, I just have to mention it here. They basically plan to break in and steal the talismans from Section 13 once more, but this time without Shendu. The others are weary, especially since they haven't really been paid for their work so far, but Valmont just says, "Come on, you know I'm good for it," and then immediately pushes the check away because he didn't eat anything. When the Dark Hand breaks into Section 13, this old wizard also breaks in, Daolon Wong, who I don't think I've talked about before because he mainly appears in the second half of Season 2. And I didn't really talk about this half of Season 2 since I kept it more so to the main plot. I was a little lost at first here, like, who's this old wizard dude that just teleports in? But I guess I'm not the only one lost, since Ratso says he's the drummer from Kiss. Daolon summons these red demons that have these enchanted weapons they can throw and recall back to themselves, but Uncle steps in and uses his enchantment spell, imprisoning the warriors in this big Toblerone. So basically, the Dark Hand finds this giant laser, and Jackie decides to use it to destroy the talismans, as opposed to letting Daolon have them. Jackie thinks this would solve all their problems, but you can't destroy the talismans, so it turns out these dozen talismans will go back to their respective Zodiac animals, and will choose some kind of noble creature of each Zodiac. I'm really curious to see how this will turn out, and how they determine these noble alpha animals, while at the same time, I don't want to see these animals get hurt. We see Daolon turn the Dark Hand into these Dark Chi warriors under his command now, and that's okay, they can get hurt as long as it's not the animals. The first animal Zodiac talisman turns out to be at a local dog show. Somehow, a stray dog manages to enter the show, but runs off as he sees Daolon enter, so Jackie, along with Daolon, look for the proper dog. There's a lot of hijinks with the dogs here, like them all being walked by Jackie at the park to see which one's the most noble, and then they all just beeline towards a frisbee. But this stray dog Scruffy comes back, and Daolon shoots it with a laser. As you may remember, the dog talisman gives the user the power of immortality, and I know it's always controversial when I ask why does a talisman do what it does, but I'm trying my best to justify why the dog talisman gives the user immortality. Like, a cat has 9 lives, but a dog is man's best friend. Maybe the moral is friendship lasts forever. So Daolon's laser beam doesn't work here, and Jackie holds off the new Dark Hand Dark Chi demons just long enough for Uncle to drop in and recite the classic Chi spell we've come to love. So they're forced to keep Scruffy at Section 13 in order to protect the dog talisman, and I'm curious to see how the rest of the season plays out with the other animals, particularly just how animal themed the rest of the season will actually be. Like, will the Sheep Talisman include sheep shearing or some kind of Scottish element? I guess they've already had a running of the bulls in Spain last season, so I'm interested in seeing how this progresses. The question of the day is, what does Jackie do to stay in shape? He says he does boxing, lifting weights, badminton, and ping pong. They've already asked him this question, and I've already showed this clip from the movie Dragon Lord that was extremely complex and required hundreds upon hundreds of tries for them to kick this shuttlecock. So yeah, the big takeaway is Jackie trains a lot, if you don't know that by now. So let's move on. Episode 3 starts with a really creepy monkey puppet in a construction site, and when the construction worker pulls its leg, he comes to life as the Monkey King. He also turns the construction worker into a puppet and asks the others where Jackie and Jade are so he can get his revenge. I feel bad saying I haven't seen the initial episode he's referring to, and I figured I could watch that episode and have more context here, but I think it's a lot more funny to go into this episode with this scary talking monkey that's hellbent on revenge for some reason. So the gang goes to Hawaii to find the noble monkey, but as the possessor of the Monkey Talisman, this little monkey named Haiku can transform into a pigeon or into a gorilla when he gets caught. The creepy Monkey King finds out they're in Hawaii since he pulled up to Jackie's house after they left, where he held Toru hostage, tying him up and tickling him and making him run in a hamster wheel dressed as a hamster. And like, is it normal for me to think this dude's totally creepy? Like, would prior context make this less weird? So the Talisman Monkey agitates the Monkey King, who's trying to perform for the crowd.
Wise guy!
And the Monkey King swings in, grabs Haiku, and surfs out to the middle of the ocean while tying an anchor to him. And there's just this uncomfortable feeling throughout the whole season, like, don't hurt the animals. But I guess they should have realized this Zodiac monkey can just turn into a fish and swim away when they try to drown him. But still. So the Monkey King catches Haiku and glides to this volcano island while summoning a wave towards Jackie, who instead of saying his typical catchphrase of bad day, says bad wave, which is pretty funny.
Bad wave!
On the volcano, the Chans not only have to deal with the Monkey King, but Daolon, the old wizard. The Monkey King starts throwing all these ingredients into the volcano to reactivate it, and on top of this, the Chans get caught in the crossfire when Daolon shows up and fights the Monkey King. Daolon's able to turn the Monkey King back into a puppet, which also reverses the curse on the construction worker from earlier, and the Chans ride Haiku in elephant form down the erupting volcano. Unfortunately, Haiku is too slow, leading us to this moment.
Huh?
Cha's not so hot.
Cherry gelatin?
I guess this happens because the Monkey King was short of his proper ingredients to summon the lava, and they acknowledge at the end of the day, the Monkey King got the last laugh. Overall, this is a pretty decent episode. One of the things that stands out the most to me is the pace. It might be weird to say, but this season feels like it's slowed down just a little bit. For me, the vibes feel a little more like a late afternoon cartoon as opposed to Saturday morning now, and I might just be crazy, but hey, did you know Jackie Chan Adventures aired on Toonami for a couple years in the early 2000s? Anyways, the question of the day asked Jackie if it was hard for him to learn English. As we've kind of learned previously, Jackie's learned a lot of English through media, watching TV, reading the news, and he knows Cantonese and Mandarin fluently as well. He also knows bits and pieces of other languages, likely from his international work, travel, and success, which is pretty cool. So let's move on. Episode 4 starts with Jackie and Jade deep in Mexico searching for the Rat Talisman, and they run into the Dark Hand Chi warriors again. Fortunately, El Toro Fuerte is here to help save them, and while Jade and Paco normally argue about who's stronger between Jackie and El Toro, they're now arguing about Super Moose, which Jade thinks is lame, but Paco still thinks is cool and the best masked hero ever, which makes El Toro a little sad. So the noble rat they're searching for in this tomb full of rats is one that can bring motion to the motionless. When they enter this hidden shrine of Quetzalcoatl, the Mayan god of the sun, sky, and agriculture, this triggers the Talisman Rat, who jumps in and reanimates Quetzalcoatl, which is a really interesting twist to this episode. There's a pretty funny exchange here where Jackie and Toro play this all off as their pest control and capture the rat, but the Mayan god mistakes Jade as the goddess of the earth, and El Toro is the god of the underworld. Quetzalcoatl thinks El Toro is here to bring the princess to the underworld and just launches him into a wall. They manage to all escape in a minecart, and when the old wizard Daolon shows up, Jade draws a little horn symbol on his forehead, telling Quetzalcoatl he's the real god of the underworld. The wizard then traps the Mayan god in a bubble, and the Dark Hand demons chase Jade into the market below.
Give me that.
Hi, we're your new neighbors. Can we borrow a cup of rat?
You know, I feel like there's a better pun or joke here, but this was so bad, it's good. Jade throws the rat into a pile of Super Moose plushes, and I love that bringing them to life also fulfills them to their canonical power. So we have a group of Super Moose plushes fly in and break everyone out of their prisons because they're cartoon superheroes brought to life. And there's not too many things more powerful than a cartoon within a cartoon, especially if it's a superhero. We also learn these are actually piñatas, as some of them get destroyed and we just see candy fly everywhere. So the episode ends with El Toro tagging in for the Super Moose and Quetzalcoatl accepting his place back as a statue now, as the rat turns emotionless once more. El Toro, along with Super Moose, regain their positions as the goats in the eyes of Paco and now Jade too. I appreciate the Mayan influence on this episode. I thought it was pretty interesting the episode focused more on Quetzalcoatl than it did the rat, and it was a nice change of pace. The question of the day for Jackie is if he's played any extreme sports, and Jackie says not really, he does extreme stunts and stuff instead. He tells a story about how some friends went skiing and they broke an arm and leg, so he doesn't do stuff like this while working, which is fair. Episode 5 starts with the Chan family driving through the Nevada desert looking for the Tiger Talisman, and there's a hilarious reveal where it cuts to the Dark Hand Chi wizards who are also crammed in a car, and we see Jackie in the background and everyone's shock and fear here is really funny. When they arrive in Las Vegas, they realize the Tiger Talisman they seek is in a white tiger, very clearly based off of Siegfried and Roy's white tigers that were part of their performances. If you don't know who they are, Siegfried and Roy were these magician entertainers who were probably best known for their inclusion of white tigers and lions in their shows. These came to an end in 2003 after a white lion named Manticore attacked Roy, biting him in the neck and dragging him off stage towards his cage. While on his way to the hospital, Roy said, "Manticore is a great cat. Make sure no harm comes to Manticore." So seeing the white tiger here, a little under a year before this happened, is kinda funny, because I think if this season came out at the same time as this incident, I don't know if they would have aired it. This might be a long shot, but if you've ever heard of the show Father of the Pride, an adult animated show from 2004 about the big cats performing in Las Vegas, it nearly stopped production altogether because of this incident, so maybe I'll talk more about that weird show and how the Siegfried and Roy incident played into that someday, so let me know if you'd be interested in seeing that sometime. Anyways, the Tiger Talisman provides spiritual balance to the user, and when split in half, separates the holder's yin and yang. And if you're wondering why a tiger does this, my assumption would be that light and dark can be visually associated with the stripes of a tiger. In the past, we've seen Jackie split into two, with a very timid, apologetic Jackie and a tough, delinquent Jackie, but we get an interesting twist this time, with Jackie sprouting a second head that shares the yin and yang he possesses. So Jackie not only has to fight the dark wizards, but half of himself, all while dressed as an Elvis impersonator, which is a lot bigger of a thing than you might think. So the dark side possesses the yin tiger, which is the nice one, while Jackie, or Jackies, has the dark one. The Dark Hand runs off with both tigers, and the Jackies get Uncle to help locate the Dark Chi team, which doesn't bring Jackie back into one person, but at least splits the yin and yang into two separate bodies now. When the evil wizard tries to absorb the power of the two tigers for himself, the Jackies jump on the tigers and form back into one Jackie and tiger, while taking out Daolon, who poofs away. Siegfried and Roy's parody counterparts beg Jackie to take the tiger off their hands, as they'll be auditioning a juggling bear instead, so I guess this justifies them just stealing the Zodiac animal from the performers and bringing it back to section 13. Overall, I think this episode's okay. It's a little messy to me, but there is funny moments like the highway scene, and seeing Yin Yang Jackie fight in one body is pretty great. The question today is if Jackie plays any video games, and Jackie says he loves Tetris.
One day I dream my head fit into any hole. I get up. I take my video game away.
Okay, so I think Jackie's talking about how he lost and basically just rage quit and said, you know what, this is dumb anyways. But I love how he refers to a Tetris piece not filling a gap as his head not fitting in a hole. Like, do you think Jackie imagines Tetris in first person when he plays? Episode 6 starts with Jackie hanging from a skyscraper while trying to catch the noble rooster. The Dark Chi warriors see Jackie up here and cut his rope, but fortunately Jackie's able to throw the harpoon of his cable wire onto a nearby building and is able to climb up a nearby building. Ratso asks if they can jump off buildings and stuff too, and they just straight up push him off the building. He's totally fine landing in front of Jackie, and this leads me to one of the more compelling aspects of this season. Turning the Dark Hand into these Chi warriors not only makes them a lot stronger and faster with actual weapons now, but the flip side of this is they can take a way bigger beating and be fine just because they magically will poof away back to Daolon's lair. We see here they corner Jackie, and when Jade opens the door, they all fly off the building. You couldn't have a scene where they fly off the building in previous seasons. Well, I guess you could, but you'd have to have a lot more setup, like they'd have to land in a truck of pillows so they don't just die, you know? So now that he has the rooster, Jackie gets a call he has to go to Kansas where the Pig Talisman has been found. On this farm, Jackie tries to convince Farmer McDonald he needs this pig because he's an archaeologist. But this pig, Mordecai, isn't for sale, as he's a favorite to win the state fair on account of his smarts and counting skills. That night, Jackie tries to steal the pig, but he begins using his heat beam eye blast we've seen before. And just to reiterate, people have asked a lot why the heck does the pig shoot lasers out his eyes? Like, the rooster having levitation powers makes sense. It's a bird. But a pig shooting lasers doesn't really happen. And one of the most reasonable conclusions people seem to have come to is that this incorporates the quote, "in a pig's eye," which is used to express intense disagreement. So maybe the laser is like a scathing rejection in that way. That, or like bacon, I don't know. This ruckus wakes up the farmers, and this fight sequence is pretty creative in the farm and is way more focused on self-defense here. Since Jackie isn't gonna beat up these farmers, he's stealing their animals. The fight ends with Jackie and Jade getting caught, and the pig and rooster flying off together towards the sunrise, and this is beautiful. One of the more interesting aspects of this season in a way is the desire and motives of these animals, but it seems like they're friends now, which is cool. Also, the pig is named Mordecai and the rooster is Egbert. That's almost like Mordecai and Rigby. Eventually, the pig and rooster make their way back to the farm, along with the Dark Hand and Daolon, which leads to a pretty elaborate fight between everyone. The farmer ties Egbert to the house so he doesn't fly away, but the talisman's power of levitation extends to the house now, now, with Jackie fighting the Dark Hand in a house flying over Kansas. Dallon cuts the rope the rooster was tied to, causing the house to fall, but Jackie's fortunately able to catch the rope while also holding on to Mordecai and Jade. The Dark Hand all teleport out of the flying house, except for Ratso.
Whoa, I made it. Huh?
The episode ends with the Chans taking the rooster and pig back to section 13 and telling the farmers to visit if they're ever in the area. I really liked the farm setting, and the fights were pretty cool throughout the farm and the flying house, and these new characters were fun as well. Even the farmhands who didn't say much, but one of them went to Stanford and the other is a nuclear physicist. Like, I want to know their stories. The question of the day is, what does Jackie do in his spare time? And he says he doesn't have much spare time, but he trains and has meetings and editing, which obviously isn't free time, but maybe going to meetings is considered free time for Jackie. I wouldn't doubt it, he is pretty hardcore. So let's move on. This episode starts in India as the Chan gang is looking for the Snake Talisman, but something much worse than a snake shows up, Toru's mom. Now Toru's mom showed up in a quote-unquote filler episode of season 2 I didn't go over, and she's a very angry small woman who constantly argues with Uncle, and it seems like they would make a great couple. Toru invited his mom to India, and I don't really know why, but he definitely has a lot of insecurity about his mother. When Jackie gets bitten by a snake, he takes on the character of the drunk fighter, which is probably a much bigger archetype of martial arts movies than you'd think. Jackie goes through increasingly loopy phases of fighting, which is perfect since the Dark Hand shows up to fight Jackie now. Now the Snake Talisman gives the power of invisibility, which is fitting since snakes are really good at camouflaging into their environments. Uncle's magic Find My Talisman app points right to the basket in front of them, but when the Dark Hand runs off with the snake in this basket, Uncle's magic finder is still glowing, indicating the Snake Talisman belongs to the snake inside the egg of the basket. Back at home, Uncle and Toru's mom fight over what kind of remedy to make for Jackie's sickness, and it seems Toru's mother made the proper remedy for Jackie, which causes yet another fight between this old married couple. Toru's mom makes a cup of tea, infusing the Snake Talisman egg into it, since no one would tell her about the egg, cause, you know, who knows what she'd do if she knew about this magical egg. Toru's now invisible mom spies on him as he laments to Jade that he wishes his mother would treat him like an adult, or that sometimes he wishes she would just disappear, which she takes surprisingly well.
I love her, but sometimes I wish Mother would just disappear.
Oh, be careful what you wish for, Toru.
Later, the Dark Hand shows up to get the magic egg, and Jackie escapes to the rooftops where we see Toru's invisible mom running off with the egg, but she drops it off the building. Fortunately, it bounces off a tent and throughout the city, remaining unharmed because snake eggs are hard, which Toru's mom makes sure to inform everyone of because she's the real remedy master, not Uncle. When they make their way down to the bazaar, it's actually a really fun sequence that incorporates the location of the episode really well, like with them running over hot coals or between an elephant's legs, even using pots and baskets as weapons. Toru's mom forbids him from fighting, but she's not above kicking their butts, which is really funny, and she gets some kind of green stew on her, which causes her to become somewhat visible. And I just have to say, this effect looks kind of amazing. Like the fact they can clearly show not only who the character is, but her expressions and poses with just this tiny amount of green liquid is really cool. Toru comes to his mom's defense, showing her that he can stand up for himself and her. The Snake Talisman egg hatches, and they're able to bring the snake back to section 13, saving the day. Uncle gives Toru's mom the antidote for her invisibility, which actually gives her the snake skin we've seen in previous episodes, and we end the episode with Toru trying to restrain his mom from beating Uncle to death. So yeah, a great episode. Toru's mom is such a fun character and a great foil to both Uncle and Toru. The location of India was really fun, and they really incorporated the setting into the combat and plot of the episode. This is probably my favorite episode of the season so far. The question of the day is if Jackie did well in school, and Jackie said he was kind of a bad boy and he got more disciplined as he got older. This is interesting to hear, since it seems like Jackie was part of a pretty intense training regimen since he was a child. Like his harsh training instincts have been pretty well documented, so it's kinda interesting to see maybe he wasn't always this way, even though I assume Jackie was probably really disciplined for the majority of his childhood. Episode 8 starts with Jackie and Jade and Uncle wading through the fog of Scotland looking for the Sheep Talisman. There's hundreds of sheep here, so finding the one that's most noble is a pretty tough task, but when they find one sheep that seems to be pretty alpha up on this hill, the chaos of the fighting between the Chans and the Dark Hand cause the sheep to involuntarily astral project. And just to make sure we're all on the same page, the Sheep Talisman causes the user to astral project because astral projecting is like sleeping and you can count sheep to go to sleep. Everyone got that? Okay, good. In the fight with Jackie, the now unconscious sheep gets catapulted off a plank of wood, crushing all 3 Dark Hand Chi demons, and they get transported back to Daolon, who tells them he has no use for such weaklings. Daolon seems to form them into some kind of mystical cube he gives to the Shadow Ninjas to go find the astral projected sheep instead. That night, Uncle makes some kind of 4D headset to help find the astral projected sheep, who jumps into the dreams of his farmer, and his dream is running through a pasture with him, talking about the grass and stuff. This gets interrupted by the Shadow Khan, who start chasing the sheep through the meadow, capturing him in this pokey cube, and Jackie ends up destroying this cube before the sheep can be fully absorbed into it. The Chans realize, in order to catch an astral projecting sheep, they'll need to speak sheep. So they create a chi circle around Jade's dream so she can communicate with the sheep, who we learn is named Bob. Like Bob. Jade reveals she's not actually a sheep here, and tries to convince Bob to go back to his sheep life, but he refuses, saying this is much more fun than his regular life. Jade says he can go back to Section 13, which is like this cool elite animal club, but before he can agree, the Shadow Khan also entered this dream. On top of this, the Loch Ness Monster shows up and attacks all the Shadow Khan because this is Jade's dream, and Jade is crazy. They get Bob to return back to his earthly form, but Daolon absorbs this power and uses it in a really interesting way. Like, you think he'd use it on himself, but he actually shoots it at Jackie and Jade, rendering them to be just incapacitated ghosts now. So Daolon runs off with the sheep, and Uncle gets Jackie and Jade back into their bodies, just not the right ones.
Uncle, you rock! Now let's find Daolon Wong and kick some shriveled. Ah! Why are there 2 of me?
Why is your voice coming out of my body?
This dynamic is pretty hilarious. Like, they pull up to Daolon's lair, and Jackie has to reluctantly give Jade permission to fight the Shadow Khan since she has Jackie's body. One of the funniest aspects to this is that Jackie becomes a little more of a trickster here, distracting the Shadow Khan by yelling out that he sees the Loch Ness Monster, while Jade cuts the chain to the chandelier, trapping all the Shadow Ninjas underneath it. So it's pretty fun to see them not only swap bodies, but fighting styles too. The episode ends with Daolon trapped in the astral dimension, being forced to summon the Chi Stooges, while Jade begs Jackie to keep his body a little longer, and just look at Bob's reaction to this.
So, Uncle, can I keep the skin a while longer?
If Jackie agrees to do your homework in the meantime.
Please, Jackie!
So yeah, another great episode. There's so many awesome components here, like the personalization of this Zodiac animal is really funny, and the Freaky Friday body swap aspect is always a nice touch. The location didn't factor too hard into the episode, which I definitely appreciate a little more in the earlier seasons at times, but we still get a big foggy meadow, and the Loch Ness Monster sorta makes an appearance too. The question of the day is Jackie's favorite dessert. He says his favorite dessert is ice cream with tiramisu, but then says exercise is most important. Jackie, exercise isn't a dessert. Maybe he meant extra fries. Episode 9 starts with Jackie, Jade, and Uncle looking for the Rabbit Talisman in Yellowstone, and Jade decides to look in a rabbit hole for the talisman. Except this is actually a geyser. Jade, what rabbit lives in a geyser? Godzilla's cousin? They travel up to Wyoming where they go to the home of the jackalope, which is a mythical animal, a jackrabbit with antelope horns, and Jade gets left behind while Uncle and Jackie go out. When Jade sneaks out, she comes across a football practice where the water boy notices she's actually really athletic. Sharing their feelings of being unrecognized for their talent, they begin training together, and Jade learns the school's lucky mascot is actually the Rabbit Talisman holder, who activates his super speed running into town. So we have 2 stories stories going on here. The Chan's trying to catch this rabbit that almost plays out like a Roadrunner and Wile E. Coyote episode, and this football team who now has to play without their lucky mascot that the water boy is blamed for losing. They give Jackie a pair of roller skates for his downhill jam, and Daolon shows up, unsuccessfully trying to grab the rabbit. Sorry, Jackalope. Daolon is so salty here, he doesn't try to come up with a better plan or anything, he just holds this kid hostage and basically just says, bring the talisman or he'll be on your conscience. Like, that's low, even for you, Daolon. They end up getting tangled up in the football game that night, which is really funny, because you have the benchwarmer taking full advantage of the lucky mascot, who gives him super speed to dominate the game. Then you have Jackie dressing up as a teammate, trying to take the rabbit from him, and on top of this, the Dark Hand ends up playing defense on the other team. So we get this big chaotic football game, and it's just a pretty fun time. The game ends with Chip needing to score the final touchdown without the powers of the Rabbit Talisman, and when he manages to flip into the end zone, he becomes the hero of the school, finally given his chance to shine. So it's a really fun episode. I love that the fight here takes place through the choreography of a football game, and it's a really fun break in pace. There's also a lot of funny moments, like the cheerleaders reciting Uncle's chi spell we've heard dozens upon dozens of times so far.
Put that together and what do you have?
The question of the day asks Jackie how many push-ups he can do. Jackie says he works out a lot of different things a day, so among his routine he does 30 push-ups 6 times a day, which is 180, but he says he can do up to 1,000, but it would just exhaust him for the rest of the day, which is pretty interesting to know. Episode 10 starts off so crazy, I don't even know how I could prepare you for this. Daolon arrives at the North Pole on Christmas Eve, teleporting Santa away, who he plans to absorb his chi powers. Back at home, the Chans prepare for Christmas, with Uncle really happy because he loves the Christmas season. We learn Jade doesn't believe in Santa Claus or any other mythical characters like the Tooth Fairy, and we even see a clip of Jade pretending to be asleep when Jackie sneaks into her room to put money under her pillow. Now here's where things get crazy. Uncle agrees the Tooth Fairy doesn't exist, but he also says, no yeah, Santa Claus is real here. Agent Black shows up, who Toru thinks is his mother, who he's waiting on, and Jackie asks him if he found Jade's Christmas gift, Ultra Moose 2 Antler Gear Solid Yellow version, which is at a minimum a combination of Metal Gear Solid and Pokemon Yellow version, and I'd love to see what this game plays like. So Jade's gonna be really disappointed to not get this game, and the doorbell rings again, with Toru mistaking the next guest for his mother once again.
Mommy!
Negatory.
The elves are really funny, they talk and act like a presidential secret service, and they ask for Uncle's help in finding the man who captured Santa. So Uncle gets the elves to help produce all the ingredients he needs for a chi spell, and while part of me thinks how is a toy factory gonna produce things like a sparrow's egg or eel's ink, they have no problem producing snake tails. Jade also assembles the J team to help, which is really fun, because I love the J team, and they're perfect for a Christmas special because they're kinda like a big goofy family in a way. They get Toru to act as Santa and deliver the presents tonight in his place because he's big, so him and Jade fly around town delivering presents and manage to get 3 whole houses done tonight. Uncle and Daolon have a magic fight that isn't too eventful, but there's one part that I need to mention where Uncle points out there's a mistletoe above their heads to distract Daolon.
Mistletoe!
And the scream he lets out is so funny. Like, he must either really hate Uncle or really love him. The fight ends with Toru and Jade driving the flying sled into Daolon. Maybe this is a reference to Grandma got run over by a reindeer, just great-great-grandpa instead. And we end with the J team, including Agent Black and Toru's mom, who have just been waiting here all episode, opening their presents. And we even see Santa gave Jade Antler Gear Solid 2 Yellow version. You know, I can understand Santa's elves making toys for kids, but is making games technically emulation? Is Santa's factory gonna get shut down by Nintendo? Anyways, it's a really fun episode. I kinda wish we got to see a little more of the J-Team Christmas festivities because they're so fun. But I actually really enjoyed this Christmas special, which is nice because the holiday specials can be really hit or miss. The question of the day is Jackie's favorite food, and Jackie says he likes and eats everything and feels very strongly to try something before you knock it. That's a fair point, but the questions of the day have been really underwhelming this season. Like, Jackie's answers are a lot shorter, and I'd really like to know what his favorite food actually is. Like, you gotta have one, Jackie. Episode 11 starts with Valmont bumping into Dowlon on the street, and when Valmont gets mad and insults the old man, Valmont gets turned into a little kid. This parallels well with Jade's frustration about being short, as a kid who still has to go to school and doesn't get the respect she feels she deserves and stuff. The Horse Talisman is located in England, so the Chans run off without Jade, who tries to make some kind of growing and aging spell, as she thinks she could just convince them to let her join if she was bigger and older. Jade sneaks on the plane anyways, and we find out not only Jade is hiding in the overhead compartment, but little kid Valmont too. Valmont bosses Jade around here because he's bigger than her, which is the same logic that got him into this situation in the first place. But back at the hotel, Jade grows a couple inches and is now bigger than Valmont. Kids are so funny because like they really accept that the rules should be made by whoever's the biggest, and Valmont just accepts this here. Unfortunately, Jade keeps growing, and Toru can't stop her from growing or going to the horse racing track where the Horse Talisman should be. At the racetrack, we see Jackie and Uncle riding the horse in the race, which is kinda crazy since jockeys train so hard to be as light as possible. This horse is just cruising with two jockeys. I guess Uncle probably isn't that heavy though, like he's so small and frail, but still. Jade keeps growing larger and larger, picking up the talisman horse like a toy, and even though Dowlon summons his own giant ogre, I don't know why he doesn't always summon a giant ogre every episode, Jade has the Horse Talisman, which makes her basically invincible since the Horse Talisman gives the user healing and regeneration. And it's probably somewhat obvious, but this power is likely in reference to the phrase healthy as a horse. They eventually defeat the ogre by having Jackie smash a wrecking ball into him while wrestling Jade, and they end up escaping with the horse as we see the plane ride back has Uncle making a potion to return Valmont back to his normal age, and I really love the horse eating hay out of an overhead bin. That's just so funny to me. When they land, Valmont gets arrested by Section 13, teaching Jade to not be in a rush to grow up or something. The whole argument of not wanting to grow up too fast or kids versus adults isn't really relevant to the episode. Like, they don't really show any positive or negative examples of being a kid or small, and the plot of this episode is pretty thin, but at the end of the day, it's a fun episode that plays out sort of like a Godzilla or King Kong kind of film, with Jade and a giant monster fighting in the city among the buildings, which is always cool. The question of the day is, does Jackie like riding horses? Jackie says he likes riding horses and is amazed by how well trained they can be, like they're almost more like dogs sometimes with the level of command. I looked up if Jackie has any movies with horses, and I guess I just totally missed he had a horse riding movie in 2023 called Ride On. So maybe I'll review that someday if people want to see it too. Episode 12 starts with the Chan gang climbing up a mountain in the Himalayas to find the Ox Talisman, but it's on the other side of a mountain they're on. Fortunately, the mountain splits in half as the Ox Talisman holder, this large yak, just casually pushes through the mountain to eat Jade's energy bar. As we know, the Ox Talisman gives the holder immense strength, like the phrase strong as an ox, and the dark hand chi demons show up, but Jade just pushes a giant boulder onto them and sends them back to Dowlon, which is still a fun thing that couldn't really be done in previous seasons. Now we finally get Hawk Fu back this season, showing up as a new formidable member of Dowlon's team, and Hawk Fu really seems to be even stronger here with his attacks, but as we know, with strong moves comes crazy names.
Tornado decimates trailer park! Oh boy.
While Hawk Fu has been taking on Jackie and Toru with his Ariana Grande style hair, Dowlon has been taking Uncle's life force and contained him in this sphere. So now Jackie, Toru, and Jade have to save him. As Uncle's apprentice, Toru works on his own chi spell to restore Uncle to his body, with Uncle just pestering him the entire time.
One more thing. Be sure cauldron bubbles at proper rate. One more thing. Do not forget to channel good chi. One more thing. Do not rush chanting.
When Uncle finally has his body restored, he has the powers of the Ox Talisman bestowed upon him, and just throws Hawk Fu off the mountain. Overall, it's an okay episode. It's mainly all combat, so I wanted to make my review of this one a little quicker, because I definitely like the episodes that focus a little more on the personality of the animal, or someone trying to overcome something a little more, which doesn't really happen here. The question of the day is, how does Jackie control his anger? And Jackie just kind of says he always forgives and doesn't hold grudges. videos. Not a terribly interesting question. Some may say his answer has kinda aged poorly with some of Jackie's more recent controversies, but that can of worms isn't for me to open in a Jackie Chan Adventures YouTube video, so I'm just gonna move on. Episode 13 starts with the Chans doing their 12th and final location spell, but they get no results for the Dragon Talisman, since the only dragon that was on Earth was Shendu. Meanwhile, Daolon summons the powers to Shendu, but even he says that a real earthly dragon is needed, and that he's just a spirit at the moment. Daolon and Shendu seem to strike a deal where Shendu will help give Daolon the power of combustion if he's brought back to his physical form. When Shendu regains his giant dragon form they fought at the end of Season 1, he breaks his agreement with Daolon and absorbs the Pig and Rooster Talismans from Daolon right away. Shendu then breaks into Section 13, which is really bad, but Jackie gathers all the animals and the talismans they possess, driving off with them, which is just a mess. Like, you got the sheep chewing on the steering wheel and he causes Jackie to astral project, leaving him asleep at the wheel. Even worse, the Rabbit Talisman activates to speed up the truck, crashing into the zoo and letting all the animals out while Jackie fights Shendu. Shendu's able to grab all the animals and repossess all 12 of his talisman powers, but as usual, when there's an even bigger evil than usual, there's fun alliances between enemies, like Uncle and Daolon teaming up and casting a spell that turns Shendu back to stone, and the way he spins back into a statue here is really funny. So the episode ends with the statue of Shendu locked up in Section 13, and the 12 talismans are now removed from the Zodiac animals. The Dark Hand, including Daolon, are arrested, but now that the animals aren't needed anymore, they'll be returned back to their habitats, their owners, except Scruffy, the stray dog, who Jade is able to convince Jackie to keep. Overall, it's a really cool climax to the season. I wasn't expecting Shendu to come back, but I think the episode was pretty fun and chaotic, with all the animals making an appearance. The stakes are a lot higher in some ways, since at least before when they fought Shendu they could use the talismans. Now you gotta hold an animal to at least try and use the talisman power. But overall, I think this is a pretty cool conclusion to the story of the season. The question of the day is where Jackie goes in Hong Kong, and I believe a lot of people would also consider this question to have aged pretty poorly given Jackie's newer stances on Hong Kong. But he says he'd take them either to his restaurant or the mountains, and this is how I learned Jackie had a noodles and dim sum chain called Jackie's Kitchen. It's not around anymore though and got relatively mixed reviews. There's a few other random episodes this season that aren't exactly canon but are kinda cool, so I'll briefly talk about them here. Episode 14 starts with the Ox Talisman yak being taken back from the mountain last episode, but they encounter the Chi demons again. They end up flying away in a plane with the yak, but Hakfu jumps onto the moving plane, like Jackie has to fight demons that can jump onto flying planes. We gotta give him a little more credit for holding his own this season. They eventually shake Hakfu off, and now that all the animals are reunited in Section 13, Jade decides to use the magical animals for her school project, which is basically a magic petting zoo. All the animals escape when the Dark Hand interferes, and it's pretty chaotic but fun. Like, we got Toru fighting in a destroyed laundromat for the rabbit, Jackie and Chow astral projecting throughout the city. Also, there's another living super moose plush, which as we know is extremely overpowered. The episode ends with all the animals rounded back up in Section 13 thanks to Scruffy, who Jade thinks is part sheepdog. Back at school, we have a funny twist where it's not Jade claiming magic is real anymore, but Drew, who saw everything go down with the magic animals and is normally Jade's biggest hater. Overall, it's a decent episode and a great concept to say, hey, we got all these Zodiac animals, let's have a county fair where the animals escape. It's chaotic, it's fun, and there's tons of fights and locations. The question of the day is if Jackie's ever worked with any dangerous animals, which is a great question, and Jackie says there was this one animal that always snapped at Jackie and tried to attack him for some reason, and I have no idea what animal Jackie is referring to here. I've been thinking about what it could possibly be for way too long.
Oh yes, I remember when I make the movies. It's a rabbit.
A liger, a lather, a llama. I don't know, let's just move on. Episode 15 has Uncle talking about going to see a Peking opera production from the Seven Little Fortunes, which, from my extensive research on Jackie Chan for these videos, I know is the drama academy Jackie was a part of since he was 7 years old. It's notably a very elite historic academy, while also being notable notable for its harsh conditions and punishments, and training 12 hours a day, 7 days a week. They trained in martial arts along with theater, as we can see in this clip, and it's kind of funny to see Jackie's childhood performances referenced here, because there's a lot of references to Jackie Chan movies throughout the series, but the main difference in the show is that Uncle was a part of this academy as a kid, not Jackie. Is this kind of like the Donkey Kong family timeline, where the Donkey Kong from the original games is actually Cranky Kong? Is Uncle the original Jackie Chan? Anyways, this episode doesn't involve the Talismans or Daolon, but it has some interesting plot twists with the theater performances using theater magic to steal, and even among them they're impersonating each other, and it's just overall an interesting episode that dives into Peking opera culture somewhat, without needing to tie in every character. The question of the day even references this, asking Jackie about his childhood, where he talks about how he lived at this school, training and learning from a young age. So let's move on. Episode 16 starts with Valmont spraying Toru with an amnesia-inducing spray and being brought to a monastery in Sri Lanka. So Toru doesn't recognize the Chans, and the whole episode revolves around the Chans trying to get Toru back while solving riddles and going through this elaborate temple. The episode kind of shows just how strong Toru actually is, and even with amnesia, he realizes how much of a schnoz Valmont is, and that the Chans are actually his friends. Not the most eventful episode, like it'd be hard to kind of sit here and say they solved this riddle, then this riddle, but it's a fun time. The question of the day is, what is Jackie's favorite food? And they've already asked him this question this season, if not last as well. Jackie says anything fast, recalling how annoyed he gets when there's 12 people at the table having soup, and by the time it gets to him, it's cold. How often does this happen, Jackie? That's oddly specific. Now we're on to the last episode of the season, and I want to take a little more time with it because it's a J-Team Among Us episode. This episode starts with the J-Team at the museum being celebrated for returning all the jade. The stone, not the girl. When they lift the curtain, they see the jade is missing, and the security footage reveals Viper is the one who stole it. So they lock her up, but the J-Team believes Viper wouldn't revert back to her life of crime. That night at the museum, we see El Toro begins attacking the rest of the J-Team, and Jade removes his mask. Now we know El Toro would never remove his mask, and now we finally see why.
I smell a rat in Bull's clothing.
Oh my goodness!
It's revealed these clones must be the doing of Chang, the villain the J-Team arrested at the start of the season for stealing and smuggling the jade to his island. Jackie encounters his duplicate, who seems to mimic his every move, eventually kicking Jackie down an elevator shaft and crashing the J-Team meeting about how to handle this clone running around. When both Jackies end up crashing the meeting, they ask questions only the real Jackie could answer.
I have a little quiz only the real Jackie could answer. Jackie, when is my birthday? Hey, Jackie, I thought we were pretty good friends.
So now everyone begins doubting each other, and this turns into a big game of Among Us, and yes, they do use the phrase Among Us many times here.
Then let's move out, team.
No one is moving out! There may yet be a clone among us.
Later, they break into Chang's fortress, and we get a super fun fight sequence because I've always said, I want to see the J-Team more, and this episode has such great character moments and interactions between all of them.
Hold it, big fella. It's me.
Sorry.
Gotcha.
There's other funny little moments too, like Toru and his clone fighting and Jackie just holding out the phone and saying it's Uncle. Like, of course the real Toru will answer the phone, even in the middle of a fight. Uncle tells Toru to use the spell that we've heard 1,000 times this season, and it allows the J-Team and the clones to all unite together to defeat Chang. So this is where the episode and season end, with two J-Teams celebrating and saving the day. Though I doubt they'll canonically stay as clones next season. But yeah, I love seeing the J-Team once again, and it's pretty cool to see a continuation of the plot that started the season. Even though it doesn't really have anything to do with the main plot, it's a fun time, and it's almost like the J-Team has their own little mini arc throughout the season. The question of the day is if Jackie's afraid of the dark, and I am begging Jackie to give one answer to a question this season. Jackie basically says as long as he hasn't heard a ghost story and isn't doing anything bad, he's not afraid of the dark. The questions of the day get a lot more interesting next season, in part due to the questions, and in part due to season 4 Jackie. Like, look at the flow. So overall, this was a really cool season of Jackie Chan. I liked the plot of the Zodiac Talismans being involved with these animals. It really added another layer of chaos to the episodes, but more importantly, I really enjoyed the pace of the season. I think it slowed things down a little more and really focused on having one bigger fight each episode as opposed to kinda running back and forth. Like, it just felt more chill to me, as chill as a show could be about tracking down animals who have magic powers while fighting mystical demons and an old wizard man. I don't know if I like it more than the first season, but I definitely would say it's really close for me and that I really liked it. And before I go, I just wanted to give a quick thanks to Buggy, Richard M, Jack C, Page 67, Paul H, PK Kirby, and Lucas17. Thanks so much for your support, it really means a lot to me. Thanks for watching, and I'll talk to you next week. Alright, bye.